You'll never measure up to her, you know that, right? My mother-in-law said it the way she said everything, casually, like she was commenting on the weather. We were standing in her kitchen, and I was holding a dish towel, and for a second I just froze. Her name was Sandra. She smiled at me over her coffee mug, and I thought, she actually believes that. Her was my husband's college girlfriend, Tara. I'd heard the name so many times in 4 years of marriage that it had started to feel like a third person living in our house. I didn't say anything back that day. I folded the dish towel, set it on the counter, and went to find my husband in the other room. He was watching football with his brother. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at him, and I thought about whether to say anything. I didn't. That was my first mistake, not the last. My name is Caroline, and I'm a physical therapist. I was 36 when all of this started unraveling. Or maybe I should say, when I finally started seeing it unravel, because I think it had been falling apart for a long time before I noticed. My husband's name was Todd. We met at a mutual friend's birthday dinner in Portland, and I fell for him the way you fall for someone when you're 31 and tired of disappointing dates. Fast and with a kind of relief. He was funny and easy to be around. He remembered things I told him. He showed up. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony in the Columbia River Gorge. His mother flew in from Spokane. She hugged me at the reception and said, "Welcome to the family, sweetheart," and I believed her completely. Todd's younger brother, Miles, lived 20 minutes from us. Sandra visited a few times a year. They were close, closer than any family I'd grown up around, and I told myself that was a good thing. I told myself I was lucky. Todd had a good job in sales, but his income was inconsistent, commission-based, with slow months that sometimes stretched into slow quarters. Early on, we agreed that I would handle the main bills, mortgage, utilities, groceries, and he would contribute when his checks came in. It seemed practical. It seemed fair. I make decent money. Not extraordinary, but steady. I'd been at the same clinic for 8 years. I had a 401k, a small savings account I added to every month, and a checking account where my direct deposit landed every 2 weeks. We had a joint account for household expenses. I transferred $2,400 into it every month. Todd transferred in whatever he had. I didn't monitor his deposits closely. He managed his own money and I managed mine, and the joint account took care of the house. I trusted him. The first sign was so small I almost missed it. It was a Thursday in February, about 14 months ago. I was online paying bills, something I did every month, same routine, same cup of tea, when I noticed the joint account balance was lower than it should have been. Not dramatically lower, just off. Like someone had taken out $200 I hadn't accounted for. I went back through the transactions. There was a transfer I didn't recognize, $200 to an account I didn't know. The memo line said reimbursement. I asked Todd about it that night over dinner. He didn't miss a beat. "Oh, that was for Miles," he said. "He covered the guy's golf outing last month. I just paid him back." It made sense. Miles was always organizing things, weekends, golf trips, concerts. Todd covered his end, sometimes Miles covered his. They kept track. I let it go, but I noticed, a month later, another transfer, $350 TEFT, same account, reimbursement again. And the month after that, $400. I'm a logical person. I work with patients who are recovering from injury, and part of that work is pattern recognition. Watching someone's gait, noticing compensation habits, identifying what the body is hiding. I know how to look for what doesn't add up. 3 months in a row, 3 transfers to the same account, growing slightly each time. I didn't say anything to Todd yet. Instead, I started paying closer attention. I pulled up our joint account statements going back a full year. It took me a Saturday morning, a second pot of coffee, and a spreadsheet I built from scratch. What I found made my stomach drop. The transfers hadn't started 3 months ago. They'd started 18 months before that. Quiet and small at first, $50 here, $75 there, and they'd been growing steadily ever since. Over the course of 22 months, $51,000 had moved from our joint account to that same external account. $51,000. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at that number for a long time. I thought about what $51,000 meant in our life. It was the equivalent of almost 2 years of my mortgage contributions. It was the renovation we'd been putting off on the upstairs bathroom. It was the emergency fund I thought we had. I didn't cry. I think I was too stunned to cry. I just kept going back through the numbers, checking my math, hoping I'd made a mistake somewhere. I hadn't. The question was, who owned that account? I'm not proud of what I did next, but I don't regret it either. Todd's laptop was on the coffee table. He was at a client dinner, late, probably until 9. I opened the laptop. His email was still logged in. It took me less than 10 minutes to find what I needed. The account belonged to a woman named Tara Melville. Tara. There were emails going back 2 years. They weren't romantic, or at least they didn't read that way at first. They were transactional. She'd send a note, rent's due Friday, a little short this month. He'd reply, sent it, should clear by tomorrow. Or, the car needs new brakes, estimate came in at $800. Him, I'll take care of it. Methodical, regular, like paying a subscription. I kept reading. Going back further. Then I found an email from 8 months ago and my understanding of everything shifted. Todd had written to Tara. Janet's been asking questions about money lately. Had to move things around. Payment might be a little delayed this month, just so you know. Tara had written back, I appreciate you always being upfront with me. Your advisor has been so reliable. Please thank him for me. It genuinely makes a difference. Your advisor. She thought the money was coming from a financial advisor. She thought Todd had set up some kind of trust disbursement. She had no idea the money was coming from our joint account. She had no idea I existed in the way that I did, as the source. I closed the laptop. I sat on the couch in the dark for a while. Then I started planning. Here's what you need to know about Sandra, my mother-in-law. She grew up in a small town outside Spokane, married young, and built her identity around being the center of her family. When Todd's father passed away 12 years ago, she leaned into her sons even harder. Miles was the easygoing one, the one who never pushed back. Todd was her favorite. I knew it, Miles knew it, probably Todd knew it too, even if he'd never say so. Sandra had never liked me. Not actively, not with any cruelty she couldn't disguise as a joke. But she made little comments. She compared me to Tara at least once a month during the early years of our marriage. Tara used to make this dish. Tara always remembered birthdays. Tara was just so effortless with people. I had asked Todd once, early on, to talk to her about it. He'd said she didn't mean anything by it. She was just nostalgic. Tara had been in the family's life for years. It was hard for his mum to adjust. I accepted that. I told myself it was normal. What I didn't know then, what I was only beginning to understand now, was that Tara hadn't just been Todd's girlfriend. She'd been Sandra's project. Sandra had found her, essentially, set her up with Todd in college, and spent years hoping they'd get married. When Todd and Tara broke up, Sandra took it personally. When Todd married me, Sandra never fully let go of the version of his life she'd imagined. And somewhere along the way she'd convinced Todd that Tara was his responsibility. I found this out later from Miles. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I spent 3 weeks preparing. I didn't confront Todd. I didn't change my behavior. I made dinner. I went to work. I watched TV with him on the couch on Friday nights. I laughed at his jokes. I was a very good actor. I'd had years of practice. During those 3 weeks, I documented everything. I screenshotted the bank records. I printed the email thread. I contacted a divorce attorney, a woman named Ellen Marsh, whose name I found through a colleague, and I went to see her on a Tuesday afternoon, telling Todd I had a patient consultation running late. Ellen was steady and practical, which is exactly what I needed. She explained my options. She told me that commingled funds from a joint account used to benefit a third party without consent could be grounds for financial misconduct in divorce proceedings. She told me to keep documenting. I also, quietly, moved my personal savings, the account only in my name, to a new bank. The last thing I did was track down Tara Melville. I want to be clear about what I expected to find. I expected to find a woman who knew exactly what was happening. A woman who'd been leveraging her history with my husband to drain money from our marriage. A woman who was complicit. That is not what I found. Tara had a profile on LinkedIn. She worked as a hospital administrator in Boise. She had a husband, 2 kids, a life that looked full and ordinary. There was nothing in her profile that suggested she was the kind of person who extorted money from married men. I sent her a message through LinkedIn. I kept it short. I said I was Todd Gallagher's wife, and that I needed to speak with her about something urgent, and that she hadn't done anything wrong. She called me 2 days later. She was quiet through most of what I told her. When I got to the part about the financial advisor, she made a sound like the air had gone out of her. I had no idea, she said. I thought he told me it was from a trust his father set up, that it was specifically earmarked for her. He said his dad had known her family. I thought it was genuine. I never asked him for anything. Her voice cracked a little at the end. I know, I said. What do you need from me? She asked. Just the truth, I said, when the time comes. The timing came together by accident, in the best possible way. Sandra had organized a dinner for Todd's birthday. She did it every year, a reservation at a nice restaurant, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a wine list that required a moment of study. This year she'd chosen a steakhouse in downtown Portland. The whole family was coming, Sandra, Miles, his wife Dana, and 2 of Todd's cousins who were in town. I agreed to come. I was warm and enthusiastic when Todd told me about it. On the morning of the dinner, I put together a folder. Not dramatic, just a manila folder with a few printed pages inside. The key bank records, the email chain, a short summary I'd written myself, clear and factual, and a printed screenshot of my LinkedIn message to Tara with her response. I drove to the restaurant with Todd. We talked about what he wanted to order. I said I was thinking about the salmon. He said he always got the ribeye here. It was a completely normal conversation. The dinner started well. Sandra was in her element, orchestrating the seating, fussing over the breadbasket, steering the conversation. She asked about Todd's work. She asked about Miles's renovation. She did not, for once, mention Tara. It was Todd's cousin, of all people, who handed me the opening. He was talking about a friend going through a divorce, something about hidden assets, and Sandra shook her head and said, "Some women just don't appreciate what they have until it's gone." She looked at me when she said it. Just briefly. Just enough. I waited until the entrees arrived. Then I opened my bag, took out the folder, and set it in the center of the table. I need to share something with the family, I said. My voice was calm. I had practiced this. Todd went still beside me. I looked at Sandra first. Over the past 22 months, $51,000 was transferred from our joint account to Tara Melville's bank account. I opened the folder. I have the records here. I also have the emails between Todd and Tara, which make clear that Tara believed the money was coming from a financial advisor managing a trust. She had no idea I was the source. The table was very quiet. Tara didn't ask for this money, I continued. She didn't know where it was coming from. I've spoken with her. She was as shocked as I was. I looked at Sandra, but I don't think you were shocked, were you? Sandra set down her fork. I think you encouraged this, I said. I think you've spent 4 years making sure Todd felt responsible for Tara. That comment you made in your kitchen 2 years ago, you'll never measure up to her. That wasn't just nostalgia. That was a message. Caroline. Todd's voice was low. I've already spoken with an attorney, I said. The divorce filing will happen next week. This dinner is not me asking for anything. This is me making sure everyone at this table understands what happened before the story gets rewritten. I closed the folder. I picked up my wine glass. Miles was staring at the tablecloth. Dana had her hand over her mouth, and then Miles looked up. "I told you," he said to his mother. His voice was quiet but not soft. "I told you 2 years ago this wasn't right, that you needed to let it go." He looked at me. "Caroline, I'm sorry. I knew something was off. I didn't know the extent of it." Sandra had gone very still. "What money?" she said finally. "I didn't receive any money." "No," I said. "You received something better. You got to keep your version of who your son was supposed to be." The rest of the dinner was not long. I want to tell you about the drive home because it matters. Todd and I drove separately. He'd come from work, I'd come from the house, so I drove home alone. The city looked the same as always. The Willamette was dark and flat. I turned on the radio and then turned it off. I had expected to feel more. Relief maybe, or something vindictive. But mostly I just felt tired. The specific tiredness that comes after a long time of pretending. I thought about the first year of our marriage, when things had been genuinely good, when I'd thought I'd gotten it right. I let myself feel sad about that, because it deserved to be felt, and then I let it go. What happened after wasn't clean or simple, because these things never are. Todd moved into an extended stay hotel. He didn't contest much. I think, somewhere underneath everything, he knew. Ellen filed the paperwork in late April. The financial misconduct documentation made the proceedings less complicated than they might have been. My attorney was good. His wasn't. In the final settlement, I recovered $38,000 of the $51,000. It wasn't everything, but it was substantial, and it came with a signed agreement and a notarized payment schedule, which meant it was real and enforceable. Tara sent me a card, a handwritten note on plain cardstock. She said she was sorry, that she'd had no idea, and that she'd always found it strange how generous the disbursements were, but had told herself not to question good fortune. She said she planned to pay back what she could over time, which I told her wasn't necessary. She hadn't taken anything from me. But I appreciated that she offered. Miles and I still talk occasionally. He was never part of it. He'd suspected Todd was doing something financially questionable for a while, and had said so to Sandra once, and Sandra had shut it down. He carries some guilt about that. I've told him not to. Sandra, as far as I know, has not apologized. That doesn't surprise me. There are things I would do differently. I would have monitored the joint account more carefully, more consistently. I would have had that hard conversation with Todd the first time I noticed something off instead of filing it away. I would have trusted my own observations sooner. Here's the thing about financial abuse in a marriage, and I use that word carefully, because I know it's a strong one, but I've come to believe it applies. It works because it's slow. It doesn't announce itself. It slips into the margins of your life, a little at a time, hiding in the space between what you trust and what you verify. I trusted completely and verified almost never. That's over now. My name is still Caroline. I still work at the same clinic. I still live in Portland, in the same house. I kept it. Todd signed it over as part of the settlement. The upstairs bathroom finally got renovated in September. White subway tile, a freestanding tub, more light than I thought possible in that space. I bought myself one thing I'd been putting off for years, a weekend trip to Big Sur. I drove down alone in October, stayed in a small inn on the cliff, and watched the Pacific for an entire afternoon without thinking about money or spreadsheets or any of it. The water just kept moving. That's all I needed it to do. I tell this story not because it's exceptional. I tell it because it isn't. The woman in your book club, the colleague who always seems a little tired, the friend who stopped talking about her marriage a year ago, she might be where I was, running the numbers, noticing the thing that doesn't add up, deciding whether to trust what she sees. Trust it. Build the spreadsheet. Talk to Ellen Marsh, or whoever your Ellen Marsh is. Move your savings to the new account, and when the moment comes, put the folder in the center of the table. You don't have to be loud. You just have to be clear. I was free before I walked out of that steakhouse. I just didn't know it yet. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this ended. Not in a dramatic way, not sitting in a therapist's office connecting dots on a whiteboard, but in the quiet, ordinary moments. Driving to work, standing in the shower, watching the bathroom renovation come together, tile by tile. Here's what I keep coming back to. Nothing about what happened to me was inevitable. It was a series of choices. Todd's choices, Sandra's choices, and honestly mine too. Every time I noticed something off and said nothing, I was making a choice. Every time I told myself he didn't mean anything by it, I was choosing a version of my life that wasn't true. That's the part nobody talks about. We talk about the betrayal, the money, the moment at the dinner table. But the real story started years earlier. In all the small moments, I decided not to look too closely. I don't say that to punish myself. I say it because I think it's important to be honest about what trust actually costs when it isn't paired with awareness. Trust without attention isn't loyalty. It's just avoidance dressed up as love. What Todd did had consequences, and they came for him fully, not because the universe punishes dishonesty in some cosmic sense. I don't think it works that cleanly, but because the weight of a sustained lie is enormous, and it always lands somewhere eventually. He had spent years maintaining two separate realities at once. That kind of thing hollows a person out. By the end, I don't think he even knew what the truth was anymore. Sandra spent years engineering a situation she thought she controlled. She planted the idea that Todd owed Tara something, fed it, kept it alive long after it should have died. And it worked, right up until it didn't. The thing about building your identity around controlling other people's choices is that it only holds as long as no one decides to stop cooperating. I stopped cooperating. Miles told me once, after everything settled, that he'd always known his mother played favorites, but had never understood the full weight of it until that dinner. He said watching her face when I put that folder on the table was the first time he'd seen her actually reckon with something instead of redirect it. I don't know if that changed her. I don't need it to have. What I carry forward from all of this is simpler than I expected. Pay attention to your own life. Not obsessively, not with suspicion, but with the same steady care you'd give anything that matters to you. Know what's in your accounts. Know where the money goes. Not because your partner can't be trusted, but because trusting someone doesn't mean disappearing into their version of reality. I also carry this. The truth has a strange kind of patience. I missed it for 22 months. It waited. It didn't get louder or more urgent. It just stayed there in the numbers, in the small inconsistencies, until I was finally ready to look at it directly. Tara was innocent. Miles was trying. Even Todd, underneath everything, was probably a man who'd been told a story about himself for so long he forgot it wasn't real. People are complicated. Situations are rarely as simple as villain and victim, even when the harm is very real. But complexity doesn't mean you stay. It means you leave clearly, with the full picture in your hands, and you build something better with what you have left. That's what I did. The bathroom is white and full of light. Big Sur is still out there, the water's still moving. I'm still here too.